Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be, for the first time in 2 months, talk about a Chicago Bears victory. Chicago Bears victory. We also have more stuff to talk about, but I want to emphasize Chicago Bears victory. But before we start, I want to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the Stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Sure, season isn't going on right now, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, sign up for season tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Oh boy, Alex. This is a game that I did not expect to go the way it did.
Me neither. Honestly, I thought we were probably going to lose this game. I thought Deshaun Watson was going to light us up, and then we would have heard about 2017 over and over and over. But instead, we get the largest margin of victory in I don't even know how long. I mean, have we ever won by this many points in the Matt Nagy era? I mean, I remember a blowout win against the Bills a few years ago in 2018, but I don't even think the point differential was this big in that one.
I'd have to go back and look. I can't think of any games where it's been that big of a blowout. I mean, the offense. I mean, honestly, this is sort of what the Bears need. Is the defense has not been good enough, but when you give them a lead and you're able to run the ball, it makes life so much easier on the defense.
Yeah, and you pretty much established the run right away when you had an 80-yard touchdown run by Montgomery. And, you know, that was something we've been wanting to see all in one play. First, we want to see them run the ball. Second of all, we wanted to see our running backs have an actual hole. And then lastly, we got a really nice stiff arm from Montgomery that was able to get that play off. Now, I do have to put it in perspective. The Texans are not good. Their defense is terrible. Their run defense is terrible. But you know what? You got to do that against opponents you're supposed to do it against. I mean, you can look at the stat sheet offensively up and down. Mitch Trubisky, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Montgomery over 100 yards. Allen Robinson over 100 yards receiving. I mean, pretty much everything you wanted to see all year, you saw it here. It's frustrating that this could probably be too little too late, but I guess it's better to see it now than never.
My only concern, and before I want to get in the game, my only concern with this is I hope this doesn't cloud the decision of what needs to be done.
And I think a lot of people are thinking that right now, including myself.
Because we all know that the current regime that's in there right now, that's Ted Phillips at the top, Ryan Pace as GM, Matt Nagy as head coach, and Chuck Pagano as defensive coordinator. That is not the winning solution. And when you have Matt Nagy saying things like he feels like he has the support of ownership, and how long has Matt Nagy been here now?
Almost 3 years.
He said after the game, I think we're starting to find our identity. That's a little too late, I think.
Yeah. Sean, you know what I have to say is just really annoying right now in my mind, and I'm sure in many people's minds, is, look, for weeks now, loss after loss, I keep saying they're just proving they're not a playoff team. They're just proving they're not a playoff team. And I still don't believe they're a playoff team. I mean, it was a great win and all. A lot of good things happened, but I'm not convinced that this is really who they are going forward. But once again, just in our meatball minds, here we are doing the, that GIF where you zoom in on him and there's all those complex numbers. It's like that when you're looking at the in the hunt. Because now you're thinking, oh boy, now you're one game below 500, but there's all these other teams you're kind of right in the mix with. And then I keep trying to tell myself, don't do that to yourself. Just don't do that to yourself. And what's also kind of frustrating is if you wanted to look at the glass half full, saying, playoffs are still in reach. If you want to look at it that way, then you can't help but think, man, that Detroit loss is really going to hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We have the Vikings. So I feel like that's going to be a game that sort of any chance the Bears think that they have of making the playoffs probably gets negated and crushed, right?
Yeah, even though I've said that about the last few losses, yeah. I mean, this is the game we're playing. Playoff losses or losses crush playoff hopes. The next week, oh, well, they're still technically in it. Nope, now our playoff hopes have been crushed. Oh, now our playoff hopes have been crushed. Oh, we won today. Maybe. I mean, okay, if they lose next week, then the best they can do is 8-8. That's, I don't know about that 8 seed or not, but 8-8's not going to get you there.
Because looking at it is, so the playoff picture for the NFC right now as it stands, the Vikings, I think the Vikings are in, but the Bears would have to leapfrog them, which would mean if they lose next week to them, I don't know how you do that.
Right. And here's the other thing, too. Let's say the Bears do beat Minnesota, and I'm not going to chalk up Minnesota as an automatic loss next week. I don't think Minnesota is as good as they've been playing the past few weeks. I'm not saying they're a terrible team, but I don't know. They still don't scare me all that much, even if it is in Minnesota. But, I mean, look, you can beat Minnesota next week, and then you can probably beat Jacksonville. It would just be so fitting that their playoff hopes could be hanging by a thread, and you need to beat the Packers in week 17, and you got to beat Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's like, of course it would end up that way. But, again, you got to take one game at a time before you even get there. And still, I want to preach this. I don't see this team as a playoff team. My opinions on the team don't really change after today. What today told me is the Texans are a really bad team, and the Bears were at least motivated enough to do some good things and execute some good plays and get a nice big win. I mean, that's really all I take away from this. But you still can't help but do those in the hunt calculations in your head when you're technically still in the hunt.
Yeah, they are technically still in the hunt, and you're right. I don't fear the Vikings. Like, oh man, they're a really good team. My concern about that game and losing it is more so the fact that I don't believe in the Bears.
And I don't either, and that's why I'm not going to worry about it too much.
And so, when you look at this game, is the Bears dominated, but you have to put it into context. It was fun to watch. Absolutely. As a Bears fan, it was nice to finally win a game. It was nice to not have it be a close nail biter. It was a legitimate win. But you're right. The Texans team they're a team that fired their general manager and head coach. So they are going they have no GM right now. And they are with an interim head coach. They have a terrible offensive line. Their starting running back is out. Their best wide receiver was suspended. And they don't have a very good defense. They have a couple good players, but not a very good defense. And the Bears did to the Texans what other teams have been doing to the Bears all season long. You stop the run and then you put pressure on it and you force them to be one-dimensional. And once you start getting pressure, then, and your wide receivers can't beat anybody, it's a tough situation. And I feel bad for Deshaun Watson. And, I don't think he did anything to lose that game. It was just, man, that is a team that is in trouble.
I mean, he was getting swallowed up. He wasn't having a lot of opportunities to make any big plays. And, I'm sure we can look back at a number of things that happened in this game. But I think overall, if you want to sum it up, is Deshaun Watson didn't really have a chance to do much. And the Bears took advantage of every opportunity they got. I mean, you were able to jump out to a 14-0 lead, and even when the Texans got within 14-7, you felt like you were still dominating the game, and they were able to respond pretty much right away. You had a safety, and then you scored more points before the half, and next thing you know, you were up 30-0 by halftime. So the fact that they were able to keep their foot on the gas pedal throughout pretty much the entire game, because, I mean, let's face it, with the past few years, the way it's gone, even in games where the Bears dominate and they win, we've seen them really loosen up and kind of let the other team score a lot of garbage points and make the game look closer than it actually was. That didn't happen this time around. I mean, they suffocated the Texans from start to finish. They scored one touchdown, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there were times when you could see that the Bears defense really struggled with a mobile quarterback. Mm-hmm. But I mean, their game plan clearly was not. They were not worried about Deshaun Watson running to beat them, because otherwise they would have put Roquan Smith or a safety there to spy and stop the run. So they clearly didn't prioritize stopping that, and they didn't. And you saw them get beat by it a few times. But all in all, the Bears, the wide receivers from the Texans really pose no threat to beating the Bears deep. And that's been a big part of the Bears' downfall is getting beat on third downs and getting beat by deep passes and tight ends. And the Texans really don't have any of that. Their running backs sort of got swallowed up. You saw Akeem Hicks playing a really good game. You saw a fired up Khalil Mack, and I'm not gonna minimize the Bears' defense in this, because they did everything they were supposed to do. But I want to see what they're gonna do when they're facing a Minnesota team that's fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah, because, I mean, they're going to be going into next week thinking that, obviously, I mean, you hope that they think this, whether or not you believe it or not, but they're going to be thinking that they still have a chance at the playoffs. So they better be prepared if they really feel that way. And, I mean, if you go into Minnesota and you play defense like you did the last time around, but you're able to play offense a little better, then you could win. Because let's not forget, the defense played really well against Minnesota in the loss a few weeks ago, but the offense did absolutely nothing. If you can do what you did today, and, obviously Minnesota is better than the Texans, but, their defense hasn't been anything to write home about this year either. So if you're able to do what you did against the Texans, establish a run, spread your guys around, and really distribute the ball, then I think you have a really good chance to beat the Vikings.
Yeah, here's what happened with the Vikings game. Nick Foles started, and the worst part about Nick Foles being a Bear so far is the running game has suffered when he's been in. Mm-hmm. But Nick Foles started, and he went 15 for 26 with no touchdowns 7 interceptions, and 106 yards passing for a 51.1 quarterback rating. Cordero Patterson was the leading rusher with 30 yards, 2.5 yards a carry.
Yeah, not good.
And Pierce was the second leading rusher with 9 yards. So their running backs rushed for 39 yards. Their quarterback passed for 106 yards. So clearly the offense was bad. Cousins, though, looked good. Almost threw for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, over 100 quarterback rating. They gave up almost 100 yards on the ground to Dalvin Cook. But I believe there was no Akeem Hicks in that game.
Well, there was no Akeem Hicks in that game, and remember this. They held them pretty good through most of the game, but they got tired because they were on the field so long, so Minnesota was able to kind of blow it up towards the end of the game. That's one thing I think we should mention, at least in my opinion.
So, I mean, the Bears do have a chance. I'm just curious to see what team is going to show up, because whenever we've gotten our hopes up with this Matt Nagy coach team, I feel like we've been let down.
Well, that's why I'm not really even getting my hopes up, frankly. I'm just saying it's possible.
Yeah, so we'll see where this goes. But, I mean, yeah, you're right. Mathematically, they're still in the hunt, which is crazy.
And annoying.
It is annoying. It really is. I mean, who could they beat in the playoffs? Current NFL. So, I mean, can they beat the Saints? No. Can they beat the Packers? No. Can they beat the Rams? No. They won't.
Seahawks, no.
Seahawks, no. They beat the Buccaneers, but that's not who they would play. They would play either the Packers. Well, I guess now it would be the Saints or the Rams, right? On the road.
I believe so. Yeah, good luck with that.
So, yeah. If they were to make it. So, I don't really know what the expectation is. And, you know, like I said before, my concern is that this team, that you don't do what needs to be done, and that you're going to judge everything with a recency bias when you're judging what to do with the front office and the coaching staff going forward.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the past 2 weeks before this, even the conversation of playoffs did not even come up.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, here's
Not once.
the reality is this is a team that the offense has gotten worse every single year under Matt Nagy.
Mm-hmm.
The defense has gotten worse every single year under Matt Nagy. Ryan Pace has done some very good things, but he has also done some really bad things. And overall, if you look at his draft picks, they're just not up to par where you need to be. And you know, a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time going through draft classes and figuring out the top teams, the ones that are consistently good year in and year out, like you know, the Steelers, the Packers, the Patriots, and those teams are consistently drafting later in the rounds than the Bears, but they seem to have better system in place. And sure, having a franchise quarterback helps everything, fact. But the reality is it's not that they hit more often than other teams. They're hitting on the higher end of a certain range, but it's not like, astronomical. Where they're getting good is they have so many more picks. That was the big difference, is they have so many more picks every year. And compared to the Bears, these teams were picking, 3-4 more picks every draft. And if you're hitting, say, 50%, just for the ease of math, and you have 4 more picks, that's 2 players every draft that you're that are impacting your team that you don't have, that you have to bring in a free agent or sign an undrafted rookie who have a much lower rate of hit.
Yeah, I mean, look at the past few years. We haven't had first-round picks. Obviously, that was due to the Mac trade. But you look at other teams around. I mean, I don't know about you, but I always feel like the Colts have a buttload of picks every single year.
Yeah, I mean, it's, some of these teams, and what happens is when you are a good team and you draft well and you develop guys and you don't have to keep redrafting. That's the part of the key too, is if you have to keep redrafting a position because you failed on it, that's tough. That's where you that's when you get into big trouble, is you're like, oh man, we keep missing on this position. We keep redrafting, and it's worse than, like, if you need a tight end and you keep drafting a tight end, you can't figure it out. That's terrible because you're missing multiple times. It's compounding itself. Whereas if you hit on the tight end and then you're like, oh, I missed on this guard, but it was a developmental guard. I still have my starting guard. When you're drafting, when you put a good team together and you consistently start drafting well and you have a good team, you start drafting guys to develop them rather than they've got to succeed or we're going to stink. And then that's where these successful franchises are. And again, part of that is figuring out the quarterback. Because once you figure out the quarterback, everything else is much easier to put into place.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just, with the Bears, is even if the Bears, these last 3 games, let's say they turn it around and the offense looks like this and the defense is playing well and they make the playoffs, and you're like, well, we could have a case that Matt Nagy could stay. The problem is Ryan Pace is not the solution either. And does that mean he keeps his job because you decided to keep Matt Nagy? Like, you have to make a decision saying, overall, are we happy with where we are and what we've done the last 5 years?
Well, I mean, look, if you make the playoffs, it's... Again, I don't think it should change anything. I really don't think it should change anything. But, I mean, in the eyes of the owner, like, to your point last week, you were saying how, they're still under contract, so cutting them would be eating salary. It feels like squeaking into the playoffs would just be an excuse for, the McCaskies to not, eat any money and say, oh, well, we got to keep them. We made the playoffs, so why would we get rid of them?
Yeah, let me go through Ryan Pace's draft history. Can you keep track of which players have been impactful to the team, so that at the end,
yeah,
I will read the players.
Okay.
His first draft, first pick, Kevin White. Then Eddie Goldman in the second. Hronis Grasu in the third. Jeremy Langford in the fourth. Adrian Amos in the fifth. Teo Fabaluge in the sixth. Okay. Would you say two hits?
I got 2 hits, 4 misses.
Yep. All right.
I'm tallying this up as we speak.
All right. Second year, first pick, Leonard Floyd. Then Cody Whitehair, Jonathan Bullard, Nick Kwiatkowski, Deion Bush, DeAndre Hall, Jordan Howard, DeAndre Houston Carson, Daniel Braverman.
Okay, so far this is my tally total. Let's see, 5, 6. I got 7 to 1, 2. I got 7 to 8, so we're still below 500 here. Now, the one I kind of go back and forth on here is Leonard Floyd. For where he was drafted, I would say no, but I don't want to say he wasn't completely not impactful.
I'm going to put him in the no because you didn't give him a 5th year. You didn't pick up his 5th year option. You didn't try
Which is fair.
You didn't try to bring him back, and you signed a high priced free agent to replace him.
Who hasn't done anything.
Right. I will go with Nick Witkowski. I would say success because you wanted to bring him back, as you brought back a cheaper option. And DeAndre Houston Carson and Deion Bush are still on the team, but they're career backups.
I put Deion Bush as a win. I think he's a nice depth piece.
I think he is too. Cody Whitehair, obviously the most successful of that entire draft. Jordan Howard had a couple nice years, but
I put him as a yes.
But and when you look at the grand scheme of things, he's a guy. We had a couple good years, but then after that, he's just been a guy.
Yeah, it's true, but I still put him as a yes.
Okay. The next year,
okay.
Mitchell Trubisky, Adam Shaheen, Eddie Jackson, Tariq Cohen, Jordan Morgan.
Okay, so for my adding up, and remember, there's kind of an in-betweener here on my list with Leonard Floyd. So right now I have 9 to 8, 11. And if you want to say 8 to 12, I totally get it, but you get the idea. Still below 500.
All right, the next year, this was a good one for him, I think. Roquan Smith, James Daniels, Anthony Miller, Joel Iwabinowe, Bilal Nichols, Kylie Fitz, Javon Wims. Obviously Roquan Smith, obviously James Daniels. Anthony Miller, I would say, I don't know if
I put him in the no. I just think he's been too disappointing for what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, Iwabinowe has just been a special teams guy.
He's just there.
Bilal Nichols has been a nice surprise. He's not a starter, but he has been a nice, for a 5th round pick, to be a successful rotation piece. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with him. Wims is a guy, and Kylie Fitz, I don't even know if he's still on the team.
I don't think so either. So how many picks was that total? I just want to make sure I have my numbers.
7. That was 7 picks, and there was 1, 2, 3 successes.
Okay, yeah.
All right. The next.
So 3 successes, right? So 9. So 3 versus 4 misses. So okay.
The next year, David Montgomery, Riley Ridley, Duke Shelley, Kareth White, Steven Denmark.
I have 1 in there.
Yep. What max 1?
Yeah.
And then last year, Cole Kmet, who starting to look like a guy we like.
I'm putting him in the yes column.
Jalen Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Trevis Gibson.
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
We've seen Trevis Gibson?
I'm thinking of Deshaun Gibson.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Trevis Gibson. I don't even know if we've seen him. Maybe one game.
Maybe.
Kindle Vildor.
Mm-hmm.
Darnell Mooney.
Mm-hmm.
Arlington Hambright.
Who? No, I remember him. He's a lineman, but we've never seen him.
Lachavious Simmons.
Okay, so my final total I have is 15 to 23. So 15 hits, 23 misses. And if we're going off Sean, that's 14 hits and 24 misses. Like I said, we're both kind of in somewhat disagreement about Leonard Floyd. And you know what? I can totally see why you would say Leonard Floyd. Like, trust me, I do.
And then, so how many picks total was that?
All right, so if my tallying was right, if my math was right, 38 picks, if I didn't accidentally miss any. But you get the point.
So 38 picks over 6 drafts. So he's picking like 6 guys a draft. So that is low. That's low. I mean, your baseline is 7. And that's part of the problem. So in this regime, you've had a lot of misses with high price free agents. You missed on the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I don't knock them I'm not going to knock them for trading up. I mean, it ended up being a terrible decision, but if you felt he was the guy, and you don't want to lose out on your guy, even though, man, that would have been the best thing ever if somebody traded up ahead of the Bears and picked Trubisky. But you missed on high price free agents. You missed on your quarterback. That was your guy, the guy that was supposed to change the franchise. You missed on your head coach, your handpicked guy. You're missing on, 14 of 38, or you're only hitting on 14 of 38 picks or 15 out of 38 picks, whatever. You're not, and the guys that I'm saying are hitting we're being very generous on what we're calling a hit. It's not like they're drafting. I mean, if you look at that list,
yeah, a lot of them are just like, yeah, they're decent guys. It's not like, oh my God, they're Pro Bowlers.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at that list, Eddie Goldman is a starter that you're keeping around. So you're like, oh, that's legit. But Jeremy Langford is a guy that you missed on a pick and you had to redraft the next round with Jordan Howard. Adrian Amos left in free agency. You drafted a couple of backup safeties. How many quarterbacks were in that list in the 6 drafts? How many quarterbacks in there?
1.
When Ryan Pace came in here, what did he say that he wanted to do?
Oh, we want to be bringing in quarterbacks, drafting quarterbacks every year.
And so it took him 3 drafts to draft a quarterback.
And he hasn't drafted one since.
Right. Tariq Cohen, we called the hit, but he's a guy he's a backup running back and a trick gadget guy. Leonard Floyd left because we didn't want him. Nick Witkowski left. We decided to pay another guy. Jordan Howard, we didn't even offer him a contract, and now he's a reserve running back somewhere else. Eddie Jackson is a legit player. Bilal Nichols is a rotation guy. So yeah, we like him, but he's a rotation guy. James Daniels is a starter. Roquan Smith is a legit guy.
He's legit. I mean, honestly, I would go on a limb and say that Roquan Smith has been his best pick. You could argue Eddie Goldman too, but
I mean, you could go Eddie Jackson, Eddie Goldman.
I would have said Eddie Jackson a few years ago. I might be going off on a tangent here. I'm not saying he's bad, but
I'm
the only one who's seeing kind of a decline. Kind of.
I think it's the scheme. I think the scheme has minimized Khalil Mack and Eddie Jackson.
That's fair. That's very fair.
If Vic Fangio was still here, I think you would be seeing a completely different result with both of those players. David Montgomery, we called the win, but we've seen some nice things out of him. But how many 100-yard games has he had this season? 1, 2. Cole Kmet is a guy we called the success. We basing him on a couple of games, but he really didn't get in until midway through the season. Jalen Johnson has been a starter, and we like where we think he's going, but we've only seen 3/4 of a season with him so far. And Darnell Mooney is the same thing. So he's drafted in 6 years 3 like legit guys. And then after that, it's been guys that we like and have done good things, but so we're not talking about he's not had a successful draft history, and he hasn't developed players, and he hasn't solved the most important position in all of sports. So you're like, well, this guy has to go. So how do you get rid of him and keep Matt Nagy? It is not possible. So my worry is Matt Nagy's going to do just enough where they don't want to fire him, and then because of that, everybody still stays.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate fear. And again, I think the way the season can unfold will kind of direct the direction of that. It will kind of determine the outlook. I mean, we did see Lovie Smith get let go after a 10-6 season, but they had already moved on.
He got let go
from
today,
the
too.
Previous GM. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And you know what? He deserved to get let go by U of I. He deserved to get let go by the Bears, too. And it is nothing about him as a guy. Like, that's a man that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about him as a person.
No.
Just seems like a really stand-up guy. Like, but just didn't have the success that you wanted. The end of his Bears tenure, couldn't figure out the offense, and at U of I,
his style of football was outdated.
And at U of I, he couldn't recruit, couldn't win.
Yeah, it's too bad at U of I because I thought this is a great opportunity for them to bring in some talent to U of I just because Lovie is such a stand-up guy and a guy that I think a lot of players like playing for. And they had a really fun season last year. They went 6-4 and made a bowl game. And for Illinois standards, that's a pretty fun year because we don't get to see a lot of good things when it comes to football. But the fact of the matter is he was at U of I for 5 years. He had one winning season. And sure, you did get some decent guys in there, but not nearly enough. And the players liked him, but the wins didn't come. They did not win. Now, I gave him a cushion for the first few years because he took over a pretty bad program that didn't really have much talent at all. So, that rebuilding that team was going to take some time. But, 5 years, I think you got to start at least getting some better results. And overall, outside last year, we didn't really see that.
Yeah, and it's tough with college football is if you're not a national name, which, I mean, Illinois is not. They're in a Power 5 conference, but they're not like, oh man, that's a destination like Ohio State is, like Penn State is, like Michigan is.
Yeah, they're an old historic team, but they don't have the program and the history strong enough to bring those type of people in.
Yeah, so the fact that you have to rebuild that program and you have to have some success in order to recruit guys, because success recruits guys. That's why you're going to see Alabama. Whoever wins the national championship, you're going to see them get a bump in recruiting because players want to go to college to a winning program. They don't want to go to lose.
Right.
They want to.
And
they want to go playing the best teams, playing on primetime games, surrounded by other guys that are going to get drafted, and to give themselves the best opportunity to get drafted.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm an Illini fan, and I would just love to see them be really good one day. They have a good fan base behind them. They have the reputation of being one of the oldest teams around, but you really have to do a lot to build something there to really try to convince people to go, and that is not going to happen easy, and it hasn't happened really. So you're going to have to do a lot of work if you want to go in there and be like, we want to make this program really relevant. It's going to be really hard when, I'm not knocking U of I. I didn't go to U of I, but I'm a U of I fan because of my family. A lot of my family, including my mom and my brother, went there, so I grew up watching the games. But I mean, this might play a factor too. I don't know how much when it comes to recruiting, but you go to other places, like other big schools, and you look at where they're located. Like you go to Michigan, they're in Ann Arbor. Champaign-Urbana is in the middle of nowhere.
It's true.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
So, going back to the Bears game, we've gone off on tangents here.
Many tangents.
Is the opening drive on defense is I got a little nervous because you did see the Texans moving the ball, and you're like, oh man, is this what this game's going to look like? The Bears did make a stop and immediately got the ball back, and David Montgomery hits the 80-yard touchdown run, which, not trying to take any credit away from him, but Allen Robinson and Alex Bars were the two that made that run happen. Alex Bars came over and got to the second level and took out a linebacker, and Allen Robinson ran with that play and stopped David Montgomery from getting caught from behind and continued blocking down the field. And that was great to see. I've lambasted Allen Robinson the last couple weeks, but he came out to play tonight, and I don't know if he's playing for the 31 other teams or if he's just got renewed vigor to play for the Chicago Bears. Either way, he came to play today.
This was probably his best game of the year, wouldn't you say?
I would say, all around. You didn't see any of the showboating. You didn't see any bad plays, really. You saw him have some yards after the catch. You saw him make some blocks.
That one nice deke move.
Yeah, so you saw some really good things from him. And I would probably say, best game of the season.
He did pretty much everything, like you said. He made that really nice catch along the sideline, setting up another touchdown. Like I mentioned, that nice deke move. You mentioned the block to help that Montgomery run. He was kind of all over the place today, and he had over 100 receiving yards, which was really nice to see. And you rack a touchdown on top of that to kind of put the cherry on top. That was really nice to see. It was obviously nice to see David Montgomery. You know what I thought was really interesting? Watching this game was just seeing how the defense was really able to get pressure and to cause them to lose, to cause the Texans and Deshaun Watson to lose so many yards, for a guy who's athletic and mobile.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson is super mobile. And the two plays where it was like, what was it, back-to-back sacks where they got the safety. That was started with, the defensive backs having good coverage, and the defensive line had good pressure, and keeping contained. So there was really no lanes. A lot of the times when Deshaun Watson was able to run and have success was he rolled out because he had some time, rolled out, and then had a run lane. In those plays, there was nowhere to go. The pressure came, and they had contained. So there was nowhere to bounce outside, and inside was collapsing. And honestly, that's in the NFL. That's when you're going to see the most success, is when you collapse the inside pocket. Is sure the pretty sacks and everything are coming from around the outside, and that's where your big money guys are. But when you collapse that pocket, the quarterback doesn't have anywhere to step up into, and that's when you see the tipped balls, the interceptions, because there's not a clear line to throw, hands up, and you'll see a lot of sacks that way too. And that's kind of what, as good as Khalil Mack is, it kind of shows you that that Akeem Hicks is the driving force, because you're like, he's the one that just absolutely dominates in the front and collapses that pocket and makes it possible for Akeem or for Khalil Mack to get around and make those plays.
Well, we saw it last year. I mean, when Akeem Hicks was out, we saw the struggles in that area. Now, speaking of Khalil Mack, I think we also have to mention today he had a nice game. He had the safety and he forced a fumble. That was really nice to see.
Batted down pass.
And a bad down pass. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, he had a sack. He had the strip.
Mm-hmm.
The batted down pass, the safety.
Yeah, the safety was fun because it wasn't one of those borderline, oh, is it a safety? Is it not a safety? He was just grabbed and forced right into the back of the end zone.
Yeah. But, people want to beat up Deshaun Watson for this game, but the guy was 21 of 30, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 102 quarterback rating. Where you got him, 6 sacks.
Exactly. You sacked him 6 times, some for very big losses, including the safety. He just didn't have any good targets open, and he was under pressure the entire time. I mean, if he was truly having a bad game under these circumstances, he'd probably be having like a game where it's like 2-3 picks and you throw under 200 yards. That wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, Deshaun Watson is an incredibly talented guy, but boy, oh boy, the team around him is not good.
Yeah, and you had Fuller, who's a Pro Bowl level wide receiver, and has been, so when earlier in when the Texans traded DeAndre Hopkins, you saw a lot of struggles out of Deshaun Watson because that was his guy. I mean, you had an elite receiver with a crappy rest of the core. And then you saw Fuller step up and be a guy that could be the guy. And you saw improvement. He gets suspended. And you're left. He's replaced by a guy named Kiki Kuti. Yeah, Kiki Kuti. Who is from Texas Tech. I don't know anything about him, but that guy caught 3 balls for 24 yards. He was not putting fear in the Bears' hearts.
No, he was not quite like DeAndre Hopkins.
And you have their second leading receiver in the game was the running back Johnson. So it's the passing game, the passing attack wasn't there. The Bears' defensive backs gave, they had good pressure on and didn't really allow the big plays, kept everything underneath, and the defensive line was able to apply pressure. They stopped the run. I mean, you look at their rushing attack, and
their run game is not one of their strengths.
Their leading rusher had 42 yards and under 4 yards a carry. Duke Johnson ran for 3.3 yards a carry. So, you're not seeing, the Bears stopped the run. They had good coverage. They were able to get pressure, and that was a recipe. Then it allowed the offense to, the offense scored some points, and it just made the Texans in the hole. And when you're in a hole as a defense, you can be more aggressive. And that's the thing is when you're playing in a game where you're constantly behind or it's a close game, you're like, I can't give up this play. I can't give this up because otherwise, we're in a hole and our offense is really struggling. But in a game where your offense is scoring points and you're ahead, you're like, all right, I can take this. I can take these shots. I can try to jump underneath. And if you notice, a lot of times is at the end of the games, it's when you see the defenses be opportunistic. The pick sixes and things are usually in routes because the defense is allowed to be more aggressive because if I get burned, I try to jump the route and get that pick six and I get burned and that guy picks up 30 yards. All right, well, it sucks, but we're still up by 20 points, And that's what happened with the Bears. They were able to play tighter coverage. They were able to to be more aggressive and not worry about those things because they had a cushion lead. And as the game got more out of hand, the defense was able to play more aggressively.
What was really nice about this game, too, was that they were able to take control right away. I thought that was really nice. The fact that they came to play right away and they didn't mess around.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the Bears were up by 30-7 at halftime.
And they did not bend or break. I mean, heck, even when the game was out of hand, when the Texans were at the goal line and A.J. McCarron had to come in briefly, they didn't let them get through. I mean, they sacked him for another loss. I mean, they just kept the foot on the gas the entire way.
Well, I mean, even the play before that, when Deshaun Watson was running, is the last 6 weeks, he would have scored. He would have absolutely scored. And the Bears came in there and they came in ready to stop that play. And you had two guys hit him. They took him and he didn't make it. They called it a touchdown, but clearly he was down before he fumbled and it was a yard shy. And the defense stood tall there.
Yeah.
And I mean, not for nothing, but this outpour of offense was so good, the Bears scored 3 points in the third quarter.
Woo!
So it's they took care of business. You saw some great plays. Khalil Mack knew that Akeem Hicks had the running back, wrapped up, and went in there and just ripped the ball away. I feel bad because that running back is going to get dinged on the, in their internal scoring system, because the coaches in these games, when they go back and watch the film, they have this internal scoring system that they score their own players. And that running back is going to get dinged for fumbling. But that was just Khalil Mack taking the ball and taking it away from him. And you're like, well, what are you going to do? Khalil Mack is an absolute beast. Like, what are you going to do? Akeem Hicks has you wrapped up and Khalil Mack is taking the ball away. It's just like, Scott.
Hard to hang on.
Yeah, it's like Scott Farkas, coming and taking your lunch money.
With that hat.
Cry, baby. I played that movie the other day for my daughter for the first time. She never saw it before. And she was into it until a certain point, and then it was like, I don't like this movie. And it's when they closed the door on the tail of one of the Bumpus's dogs, and it was howling. And she's like, that poor dog, why would they do that to him? I don't like this movie.
I like Scott Farkas getting beaten up. Just those squeals he makes.
He got his ass whooped.
And that's what Khalil Mack did to the Texans today.
He really did. But, I do have issues. This was a dominant game, and the Bears did good things. But, man, Matt Nagy struck again. So, after that turnover, and I called it. And it was funny. I called it, and I saw multiple people tweet it, too. So, what was the next play after the strip fumble?
You're gonna have to remind me. I honestly don't remember.
It was a handoff to Cordero Patterson that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. I couldn't remember if that was the first play right after or not, but yeah.
And then you had the sideline reporter talking about how, the Bears offensive line finally is playing multiple games together, and you're seeing that in the field because they're playing better. And then immediately the play that they were lined up for while they were talking resulted in Trubisky getting sacked by 3 guys at the same time.
Yeah.
And the frustrating part for me is...
And you were pushed out of field goal range.
The frustrating part for me on that one was it was clear, if you look, that they were bringing more defenders then there was guys to block, and is Mitch Trubisky didn't call an audible. Matt Nagy didn't call a timeout, and they just went with that play. And you know, Mitch Trubisky on paper had a pretty flawless game. You look at his stat sheet: 24, 33, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 126.7 quarterback rating. Like, those are good numbers. And I think he did pretty much everything that was asked of him. But the difference between him and a really good quarterback is that he still can't hit those deep passes, and he can't read the defense. He's just doing what's called. Oh, you tell me to do this? That's what I'm doing. And that's why he'll throw in triple coverage, because we're like, well, that's the guy they told me to throw it to, so I'm throwing it to that guy. Doesn't matter how many people are there. and that's the thing. It's like, well, that's, especially after he got benched, he's playing, but he's just doing what they're telling him. And so, you know what? They called that play, and I see they're bringing more guys than I have offensive linemen. I'm just going to go with the play. And that's the frustrating part, is where you would see a team like the Green Bay Packers or the Kansas City Chiefs is, I guarantee you, within the first 2 plays of them getting that turnover, they're taking a shot deep.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And the Bears didn't. And so it's a waste of a turnover. And that's the thing is, you know, the Bears defense this season as a whole is not been very good with getting turnovers. And the Bears offense, when they have gotten turnovers, have been very bad at scoring on those.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and it was frustrating at the moment. Obviously, it didn't make big difference in the long run, but yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. You get a turnover, and it's almost like Matt Nagy likes to take away momentum. So many times, whether they get a big turnover or they score on a drive or two and things are looking, it's let's go to this really conservative, wacky play calling where you're running with Cordell Patterson or you're doing bubble screens that don't go anywhere instead of just taking a shot. And again, it didn't matter in the long run, but yeah, I know what you mean by that was being frustrating.
Yeah, and you know, so that's just really frustrating. And I get Matt Nagy is trying to take a lot of the pressure off of Mitch Trubisky because he doesn't believe in Mitch. There's no way he believes in Mitch Trubisky. You can't tell me that. Is Mitch Trubisky did not throw a pass until the 3rd drive of this game, and they were already up by a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing is you saw Matt Nagy prior to Mitch coming back these last few games over his career as the head coach of the Bears. They pass like 2/3 of the time. They are a pass first, pass happy team. And even games where they just didn't run the ball at all, and you had the beat writers calling out Matt Nagy for not running the ball. And he's just like, well, to a point, I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And when it's not until the 3rd drive that he has Trubisky throw a pass, it just screams that he doesn't believe in his quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true.
You know, you had the drive that ended in the Jimmy Graham touchdown, and that was probably one of the best drives of the season. You know, not the whole offensive series, but just as a drive, you mixed plays up. You were able to march down the field, and it It didn't take, it wasn't an explosive play. It was just you took control, you marched down the field, and you had a nice play on, it was a nice throw. It was a nice play by your tight end. And I was like, where has this drive been all season long?
Right. I mean, you ended that drive doing what you did best when you were 5-1, and that was targeting Jimmy Graham and mismatches in the end zone. And look, it worked. It worked very nicely.
Yeah, and it was funny because they lined up with Jimmy Graham to the left, and then you had a like a diamond formation with the wide receivers on the right side. And I'm like, oh man, they are going to throw a bubble screen to the wide receiver on this play, aren't they? I was like, they totally are. And they did. And not only did they not, is they basically gave a misdirection over there, got isolation for Jimmy Graham with a defensive back where he had a size advantage, and made him pay with a good throw. And I was like, holy crap, this is what we were supposed to see. This is what we've supposed to have been seeing the last several years.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of frustrating seeing this finally coming, not just one drive every few games, but seeing multiple good drives, seeing multiple good things, especially something like that when it's probably too little too late.
So that was a good drive. There was another drive, the one on where Mooney scored, is you saw a really nice RPO decision from Mitch Trubisky. Is he had that ball and he was going to hand it off, and he pulled it back out because he kept his eyes downfield and threw a nice pass. And I went, holy cow, that was what we were expecting to see when we drafted Mitch Trubisky, is that play. I was like, wow, like he did what he was supposed to do. He kept his eyes downfield, and he pulled the ball back that was basically in the running back's gut and made the right play. And that's what we need to see. A quarterback that takes charge there. And I was like, all right, I saw some really, really good things from Mitch Trubisky here.
Yeah, seeing the RPO work was a nice breath of fresh air. But again, would have been nice if we saw that a little earlier. I really liked just seeing the offense not overcomplicate things. I mean, they knew they were playing a bad defense, and you had some of the weird things about Nagy we talked about with Cordell Patterson, but overall, I think they kept it simple enough, but spread it around nicely where they were just able to make things happen. I mean, stop trying to overcomplicate things. I mean, remember mid-season when getting like 3 yards on a 3rd and 3 was like trying to dissect the brain of some advanced species? It just wasn't necessarily. I mean, they were able to spread things out, but keep it a fairly simple game. You didn't have Mitch Trubisky throwing bombs downfield. You didn't have him doing any wacky wildcat or flea flicker plays. But you just, you kept the playbook simple. You spread it out, and you made the plays you were supposed to make.
Yeah, and then at the last drive before the half, you saw some. It was basically a summary of what this Bears season has been. You saw a big run by Mitch, a 22-yard pass to Allen Robinson. You're like, oh, these good things. Then the drive gets blown up because David Montgomery missed a block and there was a big sack. And then you had absolute dog shit management of the clock by Matt Nagy.
Oh, well, I mean, we've seen that before many times.
There was plenty of time left on that 3rd down, and they didn't want to go and spike it, but it took him forever to decide, all right, well, do I want to spike it on 3rd down and go for it on 4th down to keep the time on the clock, or do I want to use the timeout? And by the time he decided to call the timeout, it was like there was a bunch of time had run off the clock, and you're just like, damn it, man.
Yeah, it was down to 19 seconds.
You're like, damn it, man. Just make a decision. and if these are, a last second drive like this, or 2-minute drive like this, have the plays in there, be ready to go, so they can run right up and they don't have to spike it. Is have Mitch be yelling to the guys, the play as they're running down there, so they can just line up and run the play, so you can save the timeout. But when you don't have a play in there and you don't have the guys ready, and then you don't know what you're doing, what do I do? I'm gonna call the time. Maybe I shouldn't call. I'll call the timeout. And you're like, all right, well, 10 seconds ran off. Like, what the hell, man? It's just infuriating. Like, I wanted to fire him for that right then and there.
You were shaking your fist angrily while covering yourself in meatball sauce, and you were preparing to just get that big catapult ready.
I had that catapult ready. So ready.
You had the sword and the old-time British Navy uniform with the powdered wig, and you were just ready.
If my catapult wasn't ready, I had a giant cannon, and I was going to put him into it and launch him that way. With an oversized match to light it.
Where the heck do you get all this stuff?
You've been around the block and you go to a lot of garage sales and you find these things, cannons and catapults, and there you go.
That's true. You never know what you could find at a garage sale.
And when Acme has their year-end sale, of booby traps and devices, you go. Big rockets to tie yourself to launch yourself.
Hey, I mean, you could probably find some like time travel crystals too. You can undo a bunch of things that the Bears have done wrong.
It's me come running into the draft room during the 2017 draft. Like, no, I've got like a fly swatter or a riding crop, and I'm just like swatting. No, Mahomes.
You have a giant fish net, and you just kind of like trap him in it.
I've got an Ocean's 11 style scheme to get in there and put the pick in for Pat Mahomes. Oh, man. Distract Ryan Pace with a bunch of balloons while we run in there and grab the official phone.
Yeah, you got and do the imitation. Yeah, this is Ryan Pace.
This is definitely not Ryan Pace.
I am here in the room where you draft, and we have made our decision. Not Mitchell Trubisky. Pat Mahomes is the guy we want. And again, this is definitely Ryan Pace.
This is definitely Ryan Pace. I'm definitely not Ryan Pace. I'm definitely wearing an orange tie with my suit jacket. And Mitchell Trubisky is definitely not the pick. If anybody calls and says that they're Ryan Pace and they want Mitchell Trubisky, tell them to go pound sand, because they're not Ryan Pace, general manager of the Chicago Bears.
and then real Ryan Pace as he's lassoed and gagged in the corner. What's that in the background? Oh, that is just the cat. You have a cat in here? Yes.
Oh, man. Did he say Mitchell Trubisky? That's just a regional dialect for Pat Mahomes.
Oh, really?
Regional dialect.
What region?
Utica.
Really? Well, I'm from Albany, but I've never heard that expression. Oh, it's just a Utica thing.
So in Utica, you call Pat Mahomes Mitchell Trubisky? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, man.
And then they hear a bunch of muffled noises and pounding. Good Lord, what is happening in there?
And then you see John Fox walk in with his monkey.
Hi, guys.
Who am I? What am I doing here?
I just wanted to show you my monkey.
Oh man, this team. But I mean, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm shitting all over this team because this was a good win. There was definitely things that they need to clean up on. But you know, my concern is that this Texans team is just really bad.
It is really bad.
And we're gonna wake up, you know, 7 days from now, being as mad as we've been the last 6 weeks prior.
Yeah, especially if they're still quote unquote in the hunt. There is one thing I wanted to share with you. One more positive thing I wanted to share with you about the Bears.
All right.
Cairo Santos has been the Bears' smartest move of the year. He hit 32 and 39-yard field goals to make him 21 of 23. That's 90.9%. He has a chance to be the first Bears kicker to finish a season 90% or better.
Huh. I mean, you know, it's very clear that Eddie Pinero will not be back.
Yeah, poor guy.
I mean, poor guy.
He'll find a job elsewhere.
He was much better than we have had, you know, with everybody else after Eddie Gold. There's Robbie Gold. You know, Eddie Pinero is probably the best of the bunch there. I mean, we had Cairo Santos before, but he was an injured Cairo Santos. But I think we found our guy. I think that's the Bears will keep him around. And, you know, that is not a problem anymore. I don't know if you heard this yet. Did you see the Cleveland Indians are changing their name?
Yes, I did. I literally just saw that.
They're gonna be called the Cleveland Baseball Team in the interim.
You know what they should be named is the Cleveland They Blew a 3-1 Leads.
That would be probably not their first choice of names.
So, I'm not saying that they do it. I'm just saying it should be.
Yeah, and also in news, Tony La Russa reached a plea agreement related to his February arrest.
Oh, lovely.
Oh man.
Was it that he said? I'm a baseball manager Hall of Famer guy. Something along those lines.
So let's see. What else do we have going on here? So this Bears team has just been frustrating, and this was a good win. And like I said, my fear is this is going to cloud the McCaskey's decisions on what they need to do. The only good thing is I've heard from a couple of sources now that Ted Phillips is planning to retire after the season.
I saw that too.
It's not official because it hasn't come from the organization, hasn't come from his mouth. But if you're him, I mean, how old is he now? How old is Ted Phillips? Ted Wikipedia didn't have it. Why does no more site have this?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. He's got to be in his 60s by
he's
now,
63.
Right?
So he's
There you
63
go.
years old. He's made good money, so it's not a money issue. So the guy can easily retire. The writing's probably on the wall for him that you're like, oh man, you know, all these years nobody's really questioned me, and now everybody's starting to look at me. My seat's feeling a little hot. I would rather just retire. And
honestly, why would you want to keep going? Get out when you can.
it's my thing is, if you're not good at a job, why do you keep doing it? Like,
Because he could do whatever he wants and he won't lose his job. He knows
but
that.
still, even if you're bad, even if you know you're not going to lose your job and you're bad at it, doesn't that make you feel bad? Like, don't most people have this inner thing that we're like, you know what, I want to do a good job. I mean, he could have easily at some point said to the McCaskey family, hey, you know what? Like, I feel like I'm very successful on the business side. We're doing this, this, and this. And, we're making money. But the football side of things, I want to step back and just run the business side. I feel like we should bring in a football guy. Do you think they would have let him go? They would have been like, sure, okay, let's do that. So that's...
When you're a CEO and you're making CEO salary, I don't think you have any incentive to want to leave.
Yeah, but he could still be making poop tons of money and be like, you know what, I'm the business guy. And being the head of business guy for an NFL team seems like a job that's you can't fail. Like, I feel like no matter what, you win.
I mean, believe me, what I want and what he wants are probably two totally different things. But, I mean... Because I don't like just rooting for people to lose their job, but I just feel like this would be the best scenario for everybody. The Bears are no longer run by Ted Phillips. Ted Phillips gets to retire with a bunch of money. Everybody's happy.
I don't root for people to lose their jobs, but my interests is the Bears winning football games. And if Ted Phillips is one of the problems standing in the way from the Bears winning football games, then I want him to not be in the way.
No, I agree. I mean, look, I think Pace needs to go. I mean, he's been here a number of years. He's had one winning season, no playoff wins, and as we counted earlier in the show, a lot of misses in the draft. Some hits, but way too many misses. So, yeah, I mean, that's just the business.
I heard an interesting rumor from somebody that is actually a legit, Bears writer. I don't want to name the name. You can Google it. That potentially the head of football for the Chicago Bears, Peyton Manning, not the GM, but the head of, essentially the head of football operations.
I've heard that too. I've heard Peyton Manning's name being thrown around. My personal thoughts on something like that is he doesn't really have experience to be put in a huge role like that. But I do think that bringing in Peyton Manning would be a good idea. Maybe even to play quarterback. No, I'm just kidding. But I think bring him to the organization in some sort of front office role. I mean, I would be completely for that.
The guy knows football.
Yes, he does.
And, looking at the role, a lot of it is, ideally, you hire somebody to run the business side and to have that be the firewall. There's a firewall. This is the business side of things. That's the football side of things. And, if there's a dispute type of thing where you're like, okay, well, football operations, we want to sign off on paying a free agent quarterback $40 million a year, and the business person's like, we don't want to do that because COVID and we didn't make a lot of money. We want to tighten things, then the board steps in. But really, a position like that should be your job is to be, an elder statesman type person who knows football They're the ones that hire the GM, fire the GM. The GM answers to, but they're not actually doing the GM things per se. So, I mean, it's very clear Peyton Manning knows football.
Yeah, I can't deny that.
So, I mean, his job would be evaluating where they are. Do they fire Brian Pace? Who do they hire? And it's essentially what they've hired consultants to do in the past. You know, so why hire a consultant that you're paying a bunch of money to? I think they paid the last consultant like $300,000 or something ridiculous. And he has no vested interest in your team. You know, he comes in, he's like, all right, well, this is the guy you should hire. And then
are we talking about old Ernie Accorsi here?
Yeah, Ernie Accorsi. And, you know, if you bring in a president of football operations, that's who answers to it. And he has a vested interest. He's trying to win. And so I think you need that. You know, somebody that really does know football. And you bring in a new general manager, help with the coaching hire, you know, be that sounding board that helps the general manager. You're like, well, you know what, I'm thinking of doing this. And like, you know, I talked about it before, is I feel like sometimes Ryan Pace just didn't have anybody else. Like you hired a guy. The thing is, when you hire a guy to go to a position that he's never done before, so you're hiring up, that's fine and good if he's either so good that he can just do it on his own, or you have a structure in place where he's going to succeed and you're going to guide him towards success. So like the general manager of Baltimore is Ozzie Newsome stepped back and was like, okay, and then helped guide him and, you know, helped guide him along the way. And then when he got promoted up, helped guide him until he transitioned away. So it was like a seamless transition. You helped the guy out. And the Bears didn't have that. Ryan Pace stepped into a big upward position and there was nobody there to help him. The guy that's it. Boom. All the decisions fall on him because who else in that organization knows anything about football?
Knowing about football,
so,
that's funny.
You know, so it's like you hired a guy that was in over his head and you didn't give him a life jacket.
You threw him a brick.
Yeah, really. So you set yourself up for failure. And I think that's why you need somebody in there where you start to create a successful winning organization.
Wouldn't that be nice to see?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's exactly what we need, is create a winning organization, create a structure that wins.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Bears.
On days when they win 36-7, we're still gloom, but for good reason. At least the win was fun.
The win was fun. Not going to lie about that. The win was fun. Let's see. What else do we have on our plates here for Chicago sports?
Well, I mean, there was some baseball news this week.
Well, you saw the James McCann signed with the Mets.
Yes. There was a trade and a signing.
Did we not talk about the trade?
No, that happened after.
Okay, go for it then. I thought we talked about it, man.
No, it didn't, because the trade was made after the show. That was made either Sunday night or Monday night, but might have been Monday night, but I'm referring to the White Sox trading for Lance Lynn to shore up that rotation, which, obviously needed some more veteran arms. And they dealt Dane Dunning and another prospect for Lance Lynn, and he will be probably slotted in the 2 or 3 spot in the rotation. I'm guessing 3 behind Keuchel and Giolito. So, you got to hand it to the White Sox. They're saying we're going for it this coming year. The rebuild is completely over. So now it's time to make those moves like we saw the Cubs make a few years ago when they were ready to say, you know what, we're going to have to give up some of our guys, our young guys, to get some established veteran talent in here. And, Lance Lynn has had a very interesting career. He was very good with the Cardinals. And then he ran into some injury issues. I believe he had Tommy John one year, and then he kind of struggled coming out of that. But then he kind of reinvented himself. He kind of used his fastball in a number of ways, and his past 2 years with the Rangers have been really stinking good, very, very effective. He was one of the highest WAR pitchers in 2019, I believe. So you have a guy that can eat innings. You have a guy that can pitch effectively, a guy that's in the career mid-3s ERA, which is very good. So I think that was a pretty dang good trade by the White Sox. Yeah, Dane Dunning, he's got a lot of promise. Lance Lynn right now is on the last year of his deal, but sometimes you got to give up something to get something is going to be pretty effective.
This is a move that's a win now move.
Yes.
Is Dane Dunning for, if you look at the rest of career, Dane Dunning is a future type player. You're like, okay, he's the kind of guy that you want to get if you're a rebuilding organization. But when you're trying to win right now, Lance Lynn is going to provide a much better player in your rotation that you need to win. And so when you make this trade, you're saying we are ready to compete now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't help but wonder what Dane Dunning is going to be in the future. But you know what? If you win a World Series, who cares, honestly?
Yeah, absolutely. Who cares? It's like, when you're the Cubs, you complain about certain trades, like the Eloy Jimenez trade, because it didn't help you win a World Series. But the Gleyber Torres, nobody complains about the Gleyber Torres trade because that won a World Series.
Right.
And this Lance Lynn trade, if it leads to the World Series or leads to going deep into the playoffs where they're a legit contender, then heck yeah, totally worth it. You'll trade that any day of the week.
And it's not like you're short of pitching prospects. I mean, Dylan Cease is still an option. You're hoping that Michael Kopech could come back. I mean, personally, I think Michael Kopech is still a reliever in the long run. But, I mean, hey, you never know until you really see it. So it's not like Dane Dunning was like their one future arm in that system. I mean, you have several others that have a lot of potential. But, again, with Dane Dunning, with him, it's still potential. I mean, we don't really know what he's going to become.
Yeah, so you
know exactly what you have in Lance Lynn.
Yeah, and you trade for Lance Lynn, you re-sign Adam Eaton, and the guy's a pain in the ass, and he's already being a turd, but he's being a turd. But he's definitely a step up in the outfield from what you had.
Yeah, the Adam Eaton thing, I mean, in my opinion, I'm kind of up and down about. I mean, overall, the guy's career numbers are very good. He gets on base, he makes contact with the ball, he's got, decent average, go to OBP. But, negatives are, like you said, pain in the ass. He was really bad last year, but you know what? 2020 was... Excuse me. Sometimes I look at 2020, I kind of want to throw away some of the performance. I just thought it was such a weird year for so many people, but The other concern thing I think is he's been pretty injury prone, but if he can stay healthy and he plays closer to what his career is, then yeah, I think that can work out just fine. I think Michael Brantley is a much better fit, and I'm not saying they're done making moves. I don't think it's a bad move. I just think that potentially you could have done better, but at least you still have plenty of talent on the team. It's not like a make or break move.
Well, here's the thing about it. First of all, it's a 1 year, $7 million deal. So if it doesn't work out, you move on. No big deal.
Right.
And it doesn't stop you from signing Michael Brantley. Because honestly, a lot of people are seeing Michael Brantley as a DH anyway.
Yeah, I just, the reason I mention that is, and again, it's Bob Nightingale, so take it with a grain of salt, but I mention that because according to him, that they were saying that Brantley was out of his price range, so they settled for Eaton. Again, I don't know if that's true. That's just kind of why I bring that up.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I mean, that might be true. He's not out of their price range. It might be out of their price range for what they're trying to do in a post-COVID year. Like, that's possible. But it's definitely not out of what they can fit in their budget. And so, Michael Brantley, I think Adam Eaton provides flexibility so you can, so that you can sign a Michael Brantley and you still have a guy that you could put into the outfield and play outfield. And, or Adam Eaton becomes a platoon guy and Michael Brantley plays, some days in the outfield, some days DH. It gives you some options, and, you don't lock a guy that signed a 1 year deal into a starting spot where you can't upgrade from that.
Right. It's not a crippling move by any means.
But I think the White Sox are not done. And
I don't think they are. I think they make one more sizable move.
And the James McCann thing, I think that hurts the White Sox. I don't know how you keep him.
He was. I really don't think he was ever coming back. I mean, you heard his interview with the press after the season ended. I mean, that right there indicated he probably wasn't coming back.
Well, I mean, I think he knew. Are they going to pay a backup catcher to be that kind of money? I mean, what did they get $10 million a year or something?
Right, and they already have a starting catcher, so why would they be looking for a starting catcher?
Yeah, so, they're not going to pay a backup catcher $10 million a year for 4 years. Like, that's just not going to happen. So, I think he saw the writing on the wall and knew that they weren't going to pay him, and he needed more playing time. So, like, the White Sox are going to miss him. Lucas Giolito is going to definitely miss him. And I think replacing him with a backup catcher that's going to be a good pitch framer is going to be really important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen on both sides of town how important a backup catcher can be.
Oh, absolutely. And, I hope James McCann really succeeds. But I think...
Me too.
But this is too big of a payday for him to pass on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's face it. If he had an offer to be like a 2-year backup deal versus a 4-year, $10 million deal, I mean, he's going to take the deal, the bigger one.
Absolutely. I mean, what would the White Sox probably offer him? Half that? Like 2 year,
probably.
2 year, $10 million, something along those lines.
Probably.
And that's, why would you do that? 2 year, $10 million versus 4 year, $40 million? Just, it doesn't make any sense financially. I mean, it'd be one thing if, you were playing in a state that didn't have state income tax, so that was a big factor, and it was a reasonably close deal, or you were at the end of your career, but none of those things are reality. So you're like, just go to the Mets, take their money and try to help them build a winning ball club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the White Sox, definitely look for them to continue moves. I think Michael Brantley's probably still there in there. I mean, he's not George Springer money. I think a Michael Brantley is going to less per year and less number of years than George Springer. So I think that's much more in tune with what the White Sox are trying to do.
Yeah, I think I think he, in terms of George Springer, I think he could go to the Astros. He could go back to the Astros, or I could see him going to like Toronto, because it looks like Toronto is willing to spend some money. So, yeah, I think George Springer is going to end up getting one of the bigger paydays, and I think that was the prediction by most people anyway. So, as he is one of the top 5 free agents in this class.
Yeah. So, and unsurprisingly, the Cubs haven't done any moves.
Nope. They haven't done jack. We're promised that changes are on the way, but until then, it's just sitting here and watching them do absolutely nothing. Yeah, it's not fun. They got a Rule 5 pick that looks interesting, but that's about it.
This is sad that we're talking about our Rule 5 pickups for the Cubs.
Yeah, really. I mean, you know what I wrote for Cubby's Crib the other day? It still has to be released, but for any Cubs fans listening, if you want to read this, I did a list of potential veteran options at second base that are both affordable and make sense. Obviously, the DJ LeMahieu's out of the question. I think Colton Wong's out of the question, and frankly, I don't want to pay Colton Wong a bunch of money either. But, I look at options out there. I'm like, some of these guys would only cost you a range $3 to $7 million. But I'm at the point where right now, I don't think the Cubs are even willing to spend that much right now.
Nope, none ways they're even going to do that much.
Ricketts is going to go up to Jed Hoyer and be like, here's what you can offer. This is a sock full of pennies. Yeah, that's what you can offer.
He reaches into his bra strap, pulls out a change purse, and was like, here's 3 farthings for you to spend.
Oh, just that image.
He pulls out his summer bra money.
Oh. You know what I see? I see like Tom Ricketts just strolling down the street all happy, but like he's really on the lookout for loose change. And like he finds like 1 penny on the ground, he just pounces on it.
He has wadded up gum at the tip of his shoe, and he just taps his foot. He's like, he can't see me. And he's tapping it on the pennies. And then he goes back into his office where he's got like a scraper, and he's scraping the penny and the gums apart.
Every step he takes is like this noise.
Gotta pay for those Wrigley renovations.
We can't sell pumpkins right now because of COVID, so we have to do other ways.
As we missed out on a prime opportunity to sell Christmas tchotchkes.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I missed that. The last few years, I had gone to the Cubs Chris Kindle Market, and it was actually really, really nice. It was set up nicely. The rink was in the middle where you can skate. You can go on some of those concourse porches that they built right along the side there. You could sit down by a heated fire, drink some hot chocolate. I did miss that this year, and I'm sure the Cubs missed it too, because that's less money in their pockets.
We missed out on so many tchotchkes. Now we can't pay a second baseman.
Ah, boy. No cuckoo clocks were sold this year.
We needed to sell at least 14 cuckoo clocks to afford a number 4 pitcher.
We didn't get that, so sorry.
So sorry. Albert Alzolay is going to be your guy.
We also picked up Ryan Dempster. he was so annoying in our studio. We just said, look, if you shut up, just pitch.
But the last thing I think we have to talk about is basketball is back. Woo. And the Bulls had their first game of the season, the preseason game against the Houston Rockets. And it was not the result I think anybody wanted to see. They were down by like 20 points at halftime, and they were down by, over 30 points at one point. It was not the result that they wanted to see. Larry Markkinen only scored 13 points, and Kobe White, he had 15 points and 6 assists, but he started really cold from the field, and you saw they turned the ball over quite a bit. The only real bright spot of that first game was their first round pick, Williams, who looked pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't put too much stock in that game. I figure it's game one of a preseason, new coach. You haven't played in 9 months. You're trying to get acclimated with everything. It was nice seeing Williams play good. I think that's really the takeaway we should have here. Everything else, just give it a little time. You have a few preseason games to get things together. I'm not going to look too much into it.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm torn. So on one hand, I'm like, it's just like what you said. It's a new coach, his first time coaching with this team. You still got to get buy-in. You still have to figure out, who are your guys, how to get them in position. And it's going to be a learning curve that's going to happen all season long. But on the other hand, you're like, the Houston Rockets are not a special team. I mean, Boogie Cousins is their only good player.
Boogie.
So you're like, they're not a fantastic team, and you're like, so that's bad. But I don't want to throw everything out because they didn't play well in the first preseason game. But then, the good thing is they playing back-to-back games against Houston Rockets, and tonight it's a 1-point game at the end of the third quarter. So you're like, oh, okay. So, they're starting to play a little better. Zach LaVine scoring some points. Kobe White, playing much better. Lauren Markkanen's still really struggling, but you're actually seeing guys play much better and the team playing much better. So you just want to see that growth with a young team, with a new head coach and a new front office staff.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my thing. So I haven't watched any of tonight's game because Bears were on, and then I was getting ready for the show and whatnot. But it is nice to see them starting to come back, and I'll have to watch the highlights on this one. So don't take too much stock in what I'm saying about this second game, about them looking better. I'm going by the score and some of the box score stuff.
Hey, the score is what matters, right?
True. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I've said my piece.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Thanks again for listening. Please share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. And thank you for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win.
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like... Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down